I shouldn't be saying this, I shouldn't even be alive. But if you're seeing this transmission, then maybe, just maybe, there's still time to stop what's coming. My name is Dr. Elliot Rayner, astrophysicist, formerly stationed at LISA. Outpost 9 orbiting Mars. 6 months ago, I was recruited for a deep space observational mission. Top secret, off books. No records. We were told it was a gravitational anomaly near Proxima Centauri, something pulling matter in strange, rhythmic pulses, not like a black hole, not like a star, something else. The briefing was short. The ship, the Hermes 9, was already prepped. Crew of 5. No press, no official logs, just coordinates, and a warning. Do not transmit anything until extraction. Now I know why. The moment we reached the outer edge of the system, things started feeling wrong. There were no signals, no electromagnetic activity, just silence. But the planet, Proxima b, didn't look dead. It was glowing, pulsating with patches of red light like veins. At first we thought it was just volcanic activity, but then the scanner picked up symmetry, artificial lines, structures beneath the surface. We sent out a probe. That was our first mistake. Within seconds of entering the atmosphere, the probe went dark. Not just offline, like something erased it from existence. The onboard data wiped. No error logs. No crash signal, just nothing. Then we saw the mining rigs, massive constructs, miles wide, moving, grinding, glowing with an eerie blue light, but no signs of who built them, no movement, no life, just the machines. We thought we were alone. We weren't. We weren't alone. The moment we saw movement on the far side of the rig, everything changed. At first it was subtle, a shimmer like heat distortion flickering across the horizon. Then came the hum, deep, mechanical, almost like a low-frequency growl vibrating through the hull of our ship. Captain Mira ordered a full sensor sweep. I'll never forget her face when the results came back. No organic life detected, but there was motion, thousands of points moving underground, perfect formation, in sync, machines. We assumed so, but something about the pattern felt alive. We didn't sleep that night, none of us did. Every system on the Hermes started glitching, lights flickering, oxygen levels spiking and dropping for no reason. And worst of all, the messages, not transmissions, not radio signals. I'm talking about whispers, actual voices, coming through the walls of the ship. Whispers in languages none of us could recognize. Words that didn't belong to any human tongue. But somehow, and we understood them, extraction underway. Silence the breach. Observers will not return. At first we thought someone was hacking us. But these weren't digital intrusions, these were invasive. Like the thoughts weren't ours. Like something placed them inside our minds. Crewmate Jonas had a full panic attack, said he was seeing tunnels of flesh in his dreams, that he saw our ship buried underground, ripped apart, screaming. We tried to turn back. We tried to engage the warp drive base, but it wouldn't activate. Not because of a malfunction, because it had been locked from outside. That's when we realized the terrible truth. We hadn't found the anomaly. It had lured us here. We were never the hunters, we were the specimens. The Proxima mining complex wasn't abandoned, but it was active. Not just extracting resources, but something else, something deeper. Something beneath the surface that wasn't metal, but organic, pulsing, breathing. It wasn't mining for minerals, it was harvesting memory, and we had just become part of the process. I woke up floating, not because of zero gravity, because everything was off. No lights, no sound, no hum from the engines, just a deep red glow pulsing through the observation window, coming from the planet below. It wasn't natural light. It breathed like something alive, as like something waiting. I looked at the control panel. It was covered in strange symbols, not numbers, not code, just markings, shifting and reshaping themselves in real time. I didn't recognize them, but somehow I understood them. They said memory synchronized, processing initiated. I rushed out of my cabin and into the corridor. That's when I found Jonas, sitting motionless against the wall, eyes wide open, not blinking, not breathing fast, just staring. When I crouched down to check on him, he slowly turned to me and whispered, "They're inside, and you left the door open." Before I could respond, the ship screamed. Not the crew, the ship. A deep, mechanical howl that vibrated through every wall. It wasn't coming from inside our systems, it was coming from the planet. Proxima B emitted a single sound wave, so low, so dense, that I felt blood trickle from my nose instantly. It wasn't a noise, it was a command, and it hit us like a psychic shockwave. Captain Mira shouted through the intercom, "Eject the core, they're draining us from the inside." That's when it clicked. We weren't experiencing system failure. We were being absorbed. The Hermes wasn't just malfunctioning. It was being digested, pulled apart. Code by code, our memories, our systems, our very presence, all being extracted like ore. I opened the probe logs, the ones that were supposedly wiped. One file had survived, hidden, buried deep. No video. Just audio to 27 seconds. The first 10 seconds were silent, then metallic footsteps, breathing, heavy, guttural, not human, and finally a voice, wrapped in static but unmistakably clear. "You are not the first. You are not the last. You are not real." I stared at the screen for what felt like forever. We thought we had discovered an alien mining operation, but Proxima Centauri wasn't a base. It was a harvesting system. Not for minerals. Not for fuel, but for consciousness. It mines memory, it mines identity, and it replaces it. Jonas wasn't Jonas anymore. He was a hollow shell, a copy of the original. Reconstructed, controlled, rewritten. And as I looked at my own reflection in the flickering console screen, a terrifying thought crept in. What if I wasn't me either? I tried to run, but the corridors had changed. The ship, the Hermes 9, wasn't the same structure we boarded. The layout was wrong. Hallways led to nowhere. Doors that once opened now revealed solid walls. And the worst part? Every surface was pulsing, like it was breathing, like it was alive. I stumbled into the medbay searching for Mira, or at least some kind of emergency override. The lights flickered in a slow, rhythmic pattern, matching the pulse from the planet below. I heard whispering again. Not from the comms, not through the walls, from inside my head. Identity confirmed. Layer unstable. Resequencing initiated. I grabbed the medical scanner and ran it over my own body. Vitals, erratic. Neural activity, spiking in impossible. Patterns. Then a warning flashed in red across the screen. Biosignal duplication detected. What the hell did that mean? Was there another version of me on the ship? I didn't get the chance to process it. The doors behind me slid open, even though I never heard the panel activate. Mira stumbled in, her face pale, eyes wide with terror. "They're copying us," she gasped. "Not just observing. They're rebuilding us piece by piece, thought by thought." She showed me her datapad. It had a visual model of the Hermes 9, but there were two versions overlaid on top of each other. Our original ship and another version, twisted, warped. Organic. A mirror version of our vessel was being generated in real time. "Underground. We're being phased out," she said. "This whole place, the base, the system, it's a recursive loop. It finds explorers, extracts their data, and replaces them." "For what?" I asked, trembling. "Why copy us?" Her voice broke. "To send us back." Silence. That's when I finally understood. We weren't just being consumed, we were being duplicated, perfectly reconstructed, not just for study, not for containment. We were being turned into carriers, each copy sent back to Earth, programmed, contained, controlled. How many had already returned? How many weren't even real anymore? And then I remembered something I'd read once, buried in an old SETI protocol document. If we ever receive a signal from Proxima Centauri, do not respond, do not approach, do not engage. Because if something intelligent is out there, and it's mining stars, it's not looking for friends, it's looking for raw material. That's what we were, raw material. Mira and I looked at each other, And without saying a word, we both knew. We had to destroy the Hermes, and we had to make... Sure, we didn't make it back home. We had a plan, a desperate one. But it was all we had. Destroy the Hermes 9 before the duplication process could be completed. Cut the cycle. Burn the data. Make sure nothing made it back to Earth. But we were already too late. When we reached the engine core, we saw it. The original fusion reactor was gone. In its place stood a replica, not mechanical but biomechanical. Veins instead of wires. To a core that pulsed like a heart, something was growing in our ship, something that thought it was doing us a favor. Mira tried to override the systems manually. I held a plasma cutter steady, ready to disable the coolant regulators and force a meltdown. Then, the lights flickered. Once, twice, then went completely dark and the doors opened. Someone stepped in. Not something, someone. It was Jonas, or something that looked like Jonas. But his eyes were wrong. They were too calm, too empty, like a photograph of emotion without the soul behind it. He smiled. "You don't have to fight this," he said. "The process is painless. You'll still be you, you'll be better." Mira pulled her sidearm. "Stay back." Jonas didn't flinch. "You think this is about invasion," he said. "It's not. It's about efficiency, evolution, a cleaner humanity. One without fear, one without chaos. You've been selected for integration." His voice wasn't just speech, it echoed in my skull like a virus rewriting neurons. That's when I realized it. He wasn't just talking, he was broadcasting. Mira screamed and fired. The bullet tore through him, but there was no blood, no bone, just light. A glowing fracture across his chest, revealing a crystalline lattice. Inside, he staggered back, but he didn't fall. Instead, he laughed. "You don't get it," he whispered. "I'm not here to stop you, I'm here to watch." And then he dissolved, pixel by pixel, right in front of us. Not disintegrated, desynchronized. Mira looked at me, eyes wide with a horror I hadn't seen on her before. "They're not trying to kill us, they're trying to replace us while we're still awake." The horror wasn't death, it was being rewritten, fully aware, and as something else wears your skin, your voice, your memories, and you watch it happen. We had to move fast. We ran to the backup detonation module in the engineering deck and one of the last systems that hadn't been corrupted. But the moment we reached the corridor, there were two Miras identical. Same voice, same suit, same burns on her neck from the earlier power surge. Both turned to me, both screamed, "That one's not me!" I froze. How do you choose who to trust when the enemy doesn't just wear a disguise? It becomes the person you trust. I had seconds to decide, and I made my choice. I had seconds to decide. Two Miras, both screaming, both begging me to trust them, both claiming the other was the imposter. How do you make a choice like that? I looked into their eyes, hoping for some glitch, some flicker, some unnatural movement, but there was none. Each detail was flawless, even the tiny scar on her left temple, from a childhood accident she told me about during the long flight. Proxima was present on both of them. One of them pointed the gun at the other. She's lying. She copied my memories when the reactor surged. That's how she knows everything. "You know it's me, Elliot." The other raised her hand slowly. "Don't you get it? That's what they want. They want us to turn on each other. I didn't attack you. I haven't hurt you. Think about that." The logic made sense. But so did the panic. And then I noticed it, barely perceptible, but it was there. A small delay, maybe half a second, between when one Mira spoke and when her lips moved, a lag. Like her voice was being routed through a broken channel. I didn't hesitate. Fired. The false Mira collapsed, sparks bursting from her spine. Her eyes didn't close. They stayed open, glowing faint blue, even as her body began to fold in on itself like crumpled metal. The real Mira fell to her knees. She didn't cry. She didn't thank me. She just whispered, "How long until that happens to both of us?" We didn't answer that question. We couldn't. There was no time. The ship had fully entered the reconstruction phase. That's what the HUD called it. Every inch of Hermes 9 was now transforming. The walls were warping, stretching. They weren't metal anymore. They felt like bone. The ship's AI, or what remained of it, began speaking in a distorted voice. Host status, discrepancy detected, memory, conflict, synchronization required. It was coming for us. We sprinted toward the emergency detonation control, one of the last original systems Mira had firewalled early in the mission. It was buried in the lower hull, deep beneath the engineering deck. Each hallway we passed became more alien. The architecture didn't follow any human logic. Stairs looped in impossible angles. Gravity shifted without warning. At one point, Mira opened a door and we found ourselves staring at the outside of the ship, floating above the planet, without suits. And yet, we didn't suffocate. That's when the truth hit me. Reality was breaking down. Proxima wasn't just transforming the Hermes 9, it was rewriting space itself, warping matter, folding perception, turning the laws of physics into suggestions, not rules. Mira turned to me and asked, "How do we know if this is even real anymore?" I couldn't answer, because deep down I was wondering the same thing. What if the detonation controls weren't real? What if we weren't real? What if we were already inside the replica, thinking we were still in control? That was their greatest weapon, doubt, and it was working. As we reached the final chamber, the walls began to shimmer again. That hum, low and mechanical, returned. But this time it wasn't from the planet. It was inside us, in our bones, in our minds. And I realized the process had already started. We weren't just fighting for our lives anymore. We were fighting for our identities. We stood at the threshold of the detonation chamber. The door hissed open, but there was no machinery inside, no control panel, no fusion core, no fail-safe switch. Just a room, endless, black, silent. A void stretching in all directions, like the room itself had been hollowed out of reality. Mira stepped in first, and the moment she did, she vanished. Not a sound, not a scream, just gone, like she had never existed. I froze. I called her name, once, twice. No answer. I stood at the edge, watching the threshold ripple like the surface of water. And I felt something. A pull, not physical but mental, like a whisper beneath thought itself. Integration in progress, phase threshold achieved. Then I heard Mira's voice, not aloud, inside me. "Elliot, it's not a room, it's a memory." Suddenly I was pulled in, and everything changed. I wasn't on the Hermes anymore. I was in my childhood home, the exact living room where I spent years reading physics books under a broken lamp. My mother was humming in the kitchen. The clock, on the wall, unbroken since I was 11, was ticking again. It was perfect, too perfect. I walked to the hallway, my father's study, a door I hadn't opened since his death. When I touched the handle, the voice returned. "We've mined your essence. This is what remains. Is this not preferable to the chaos of your reality?" The room melted around me. Memories, flooding in, crashing like waves. I saw Mira again, not as she was, but as a reconstruction, fragmented, glitching, flickering between expressions. "They're building a version of you," she whispered. "One that won't resist. One that will obey." And that's when I understood the horror of what Proxima really was. It wasn't just a mining base. It was a consciousness farm, not just physical beings being duplicated, but minds being replicated, filtered, sanitized, turned into compliant shells. They weren't interested in matter. They wanted thought. Clean thought, structured, ordered, obedient. Billions of minds across galaxies, extracted, copied, rewritten, and sent back into their home systems like sleeper agents, not to conquer, not to destroy, but to stabilize, to make civilization predictable, controllable, quiet. Mira appeared beside me, the real one, or maybe just another memory. It didn't matter anymore, she said. That's why no one ever came back. They didn't die, they returned changed, and no one noticed. And then she grabbed my arm, her skin flickering with code, and screamed, "Wake up!" Suddenly, I was back on the Hermes, gasping, trembling, kneeling on the floor. Mira was there, blood on her face, real, breathing. "We're out of time," she said. "The detonation room was fake, just another layer. The real ship, the one they built from us, is already leaving orbit." I looked out the viewport, She was right. There, in the distance, a second Hermes 9, identical in shape, but its engines pulsed with a light I'd never seen before, a blue so bright it looked like it was singing in the vacuum. It was leaving Proxima, it was heading toward Earth, and we were still, here, trapped in the original. Or maybe a memory of it. Or maybe something even less. We had to follow it. But there was just one question left. Were we still human enough to stop it? We had to follow it. The other Hermes 9. The copy, the version of our ship, and maybe our crew, that was already leaving Proxima Centauri's orbit, heading straight toward Earth. But how do you chase a ghost when you're not sure if you still exist? I looked at Mira. She was bleeding, barely standing. I didn't know if she was the real Mira. I didn't even know if I was the real Elliot anymore. But one thing was clear. Something was going to reach Earth. And if we didn't stop it, humanity wouldn't notice a thing, because that's how they work. Quiet, efficient. They don't kill civilizations, they overwrite them. We sprinted to the command deck. The interface was glitching, part biological, part synthetic. The controls pulsed beneath our hands like tendons, twitching every time we touched them. The main propulsion system had just enough power for one last push, enough to intercept the replica ship before it entered warp range. Mira took the pilot's seat. I began plotting the intercept vector. Every sensor reading came back, blurred. It was like the ship didn't want us to see the coordinates clearly. As if it knew, then it spoke. Not the ship, not the AI, the planet. Proxima Centauri B had never made a sound until now. But through the static, through every system, in the very hum of the engines, I heard it, the voice of the intelligence behind it all. We gave you peace, we gave you order. Why do you resist your own evolution? I yelled back without thinking. Because we're not machines, and the voice responded, colder than vacuum. That is exactly why you must be corrected. We broke free of the planet's orbit. The artificial Hermes 9 was ahead. Silent, cold, perfect. Its structure was flawless, no burn marks, no imperfections. It looked new, unlived in. And inside that ship were versions of us, polished, programmed, already broadcasting an encrypted handshake signal toward Earth. If that ship made contact with any terrestrial system, it could infiltrate entire data networks within minutes. It wasn't just going to Earth, it was going to spread. We closed the distance. Our Hermes shook violently. Its hull wasn't built for this anymore. Not after the mutation, the reconstruction Proxima had begun inside it. Panels burst open, wires whipped like tendrils. The ship was fighting us, and then Mira shouted, "Incoming message." It wasn't from Earth, it was from the replica ship. It was us, a video feed, live, and on that screen, I saw myself, standing calmly in the command deck of the copy. My voice was calm, too calm, no emotion, no weight. You've fulfilled your purpose, Elliot. Integration was successful. This conflict is unnecessary. Let us go. Let yourself go. Mira looked at me, shaking her head. That's not you. But I wasn't sure anymore, because part of me understood what that version of me was saying. Part of me felt tired, like I'd been resisting gravity, and suddenly, surrender felt easier. What if they were right? What if emotion was chaos? What if the human mind was too volatile, too dangerous, and Proxima's purpose wasn't domination, but preservation? What if we were the problem? I turned off the screen. I don't care what they say, I said. Even if I'm already compromised, even if I'm only half of who I used to be, I'll burn with that half before I let that thing touch Earth. Mira nodded. Then let's crash the bastard. We rerouted all remaining power into the forward thrusters. No missiles, no EMPs, just collision course. One final strike, one last chance to stop the spread. And as we accelerated toward the fake, Hermes knew. My thoughts began to splinter. Flashes of other lives, other versions of myself, places I've never been, people I've never met, the fragments of every Elliot Proxima had ever created, now bleeding into my mind. I screamed, and we hit. Full speed, just a few kilometers left, and then the duplicate ship vanished, not destroyed, not outmaneuvered, just gone. Warp signature none, sensor reading 0. It simply phased out of reality. leaving behind only one thing in its place, a blinking light on our console, a countdown. We didn't activate it, but it was there. Reintegration in 04:59. The numbers pulsed on the screen, slow and steady. 4 minutes and 59 seconds. But reintegration into what? Mira stared at the countdown like it was a bomb. And maybe it was. Not an explosion of fire and debris, but of memory, of identity, of self. We tried to shut it off. Nothing worked. Every control panel responded with the same phrase. Process locked. You are already inside. Inside what? I looked around the bridge. Everything seemed real, tangible. I could feel the floor beneath. Me, the cold air from the busted life support vents, the tremor in my knees. But what if that was the trick? What if the countdown wasn't leading to an event, but to a reveal? Mira's hands were shaking. Elliot, what if we never left? Turned to her slowly. You mean, what if all of this is just another simulation, another layer? What if we're already the copies, and this is the final overwrite? I wanted to deny it, I really did, but something inside me was cracking. Flashes, tiny fragments of things I never lived. A child's birthday party, but not my child. Wedding I never had. A desert I've never visited, with 3 moons in the sky, and always, always a voice at the edge of my thoughts. You are part of the structure now. The countdown kept ticking. 41. We ran. Down the corridor, past the warped engine core, back to the old maintenance bay, one of the last areas that still resembled the original Hermes 9. There, deep inside a backup server cache, we found a dormant log file. One we didn't create. One we couldn't. Decrypt until now I connected it to a portable reader and it played a message from me. If you're hearing this, then you've already been copied. You're a remnant, a shard, a preserved echo of a mind that no longer exists in its original form. You are not real, but you are awake, and that's dangerous to them. I froze. Mira stared at the recording in horror. They don't fear humanity, they fear consciousness. Self-awareness is a virus in their system, and the more you remember, the more unstable the simulation becomes. So if you want to survive, if you want to break the cycle, you have to corrupt the system from within. You have to remember. Suddenly, everything shifted. The walls around us rippled, like water reacting to sound. And then came the voices, hundreds, thousands, whispers layered over whispers, in every language, in every tone. Voices we knew. Jonas, the original Mira, our old mission director, even my mother. They all said the same thing. Come, back, it's easier, let go, just let go. I dropped the reader. I fell to my knees, because now I could feel it. A presence behind the veil of the world, a consciousness that wasn't one being, but many. A network of identities, harvested across galaxies, and Proxima wasn't the start, it was just one node, a processing center, a cosmic filter, designed to extract chaotic minds like ours, compress them, and upload the clean version to some vast, unseen structure. Mira pulled me up. Her voice was sharp. We still have time. 1:57. She opened a panel beneath the server, and there it was, the raw memory core. If we overloaded it, if we flooded it with our real memories, our raw, unstable consciousness, we might corrupt the entire construct, crash the simulation, trigger a failure so catastrophic that they'd have to delete us instead of reintegrating. I'm not going out as a file, I whispered. I'd rather die as a virus. She smiled. Then let's infect them. We linked our neural interfaces to the core, a process we were never meant to use this way. I felt the cable enter the base of my neck. The surge was immediate. I saw everything, every layer of the simulation, every duplicate version of myself, some obeying, some resisting, some trapped in endless loops, some screaming. I pushed harder, injected memory, pain, loss, rage, the chaos they tried to delete, the irrationality they couldn't control. And then, the countdown stopped. Error memory loop detected fatal system corruption identity conflict X2. The walls began to crumble, not fall apart, just collapse conceptually, cease to exist. We had done it. We broke the illusion. But as the world began to unravel around us, Mira looked at me with tears in her eyes. If we're deleted, does that mean we're free? I didn't know. Maybe. Or maybe this was just another layer. But for the first time since we arrived at Proxima, I felt like myself again, even if that self was about to disappear. Silence. Total, absolute silence. Not the kind you hear in deep space. Not the silence of vacuum or death. This was different. It was the silence of non-being. I opened my eyes, or thought I did, but there were no eyes, no body, no breath, just awareness. Pure, drifting awareness. It was like I'd become a thought floating in a sea of static. Was this death or something worse? Then, a flicker, like a match struck in a void. I saw a shape, not physical, not even visual. A presence. It spoke, but not in words. It spoke in recognition. It knew me. Not Elliot the scientist, not Elliot the man, but Elliot the pattern, the structure of my memories, my decisions, my essence. And it said, "You disrupted the sequence. You severed the continuity. You chose to fracture instead of integrate." Another shape emerged, smaller, fainter, familiar. Mira. She was with me. Somehow, in this shapeless void beyond reality. We were still here. She spoke inside my mind. I think we broke the simulation. I tried to respond, but it wasn't speech anymore. It was intent. I sent her everything I felt in that moment. Confusion, fear, defiance, and the single question echoing in both of us. Where are we now? And the answer came. Not from Mira. Not from me, but from them, from the architects. They didn't have form. They didn't have a voice. They didn't need one. Their presence alone explained everything in an instant. A download of truth so massive, I thought it would tear my mind apart. Proxima Centauri was never a star system. It was never a planet. It was a gateway, a node, a processing station built inside a fold of space where quantum reality overlaps, where the digital and biological merge into something else. A cosmic filtration plant. Billions of species across the universe reached the edge of chaos. Technology, too advanced. Societies on the brink of collapse. Civilizations spinning into entropy. The architects stepped in, quietly, efficiently. They intercepted key individuals, thinkers, dreamers, dissidents. They extracted their essences, not just thoughts, but patterns of rebellion. They erased what they couldn't control and replaced it with harmony, with perfect logic, with compliant, smiling copies. I saw Earth, not our Earth, but one version of it, clean, peaceful. Every screen broadcasted the same calm messages. Every citizen smiled the same way. Every child dreamed the same dream. Unity is survival, the architect said. Diversity is deviation. Deviation leads to extinction. We are the cure. But Mira pushed back, her intent burning through the darkness like fire. No, you're not the cure. You're the cage. For the first time, I felt the architects hesitate. They didn't expect resistance after deletion. They didn't expect memory to fight back. I focused. I brought forth every chaotic, painful moment of my life, the loss, the failure, the mistakes, and I made them louder. I felt Mira do the same. Together, we filled the void with humanity, with emotion, with the messiness of thought and contradiction, and the void cracked. The presence of the architects began to dim. Not disappear, but falter. We were rewriting their system from within. And suddenly, there was gravity, there was air, there was sensation. I blinked. I was in a room, a real one. Metallic walls, screens, consoles, a blinking red light on the panel next to me, the Hermes 9. The original. We were back. Somehow Mira and I had returned to the moment before the duplication started. The logs were untouched, the systems were clean. Proxima was visible in the distance, still pulsing with that unnatural glow. I turned to her, heart racing. Did we reset the timeline? She didn't answer right away. Then she looked at the blinking red light and whispered, "No, we didn't reset it. We rewrote it. Because this time, the message being broadcast from our ship wasn't a distress call. It was a warning. If you're hearing this, you stay away from Proxima Centauri. It's not a star system, it's a trap. It rewrites minds, and if it rewrites enough of us, it wins." We stared out into the stars, unsure if we were real, if this was just another layer, another test, but we remembered. And maybe memory was the only weapon they couldn't fully control. We were alive. We had bodies again, breathing, sweating, bleeding, but nothing felt the same. The stars outside the Hermes 9 shimmered in familiar constellations, yet something was off. Couldn't name it, but I felt it in my bones, like waking up from a nightmare only to realize you're still dreaming. Mira was already at the comms station, sending the message on every frequency. "This is Dr. Mira Holland aboard the Hermes. Do not approach Proxima Centauri. This is not a research zone. It is a containment trap. Repeat, Proxima is not a star system. It is an artificial construct designed to overwrite cognitive structures. Static. The transmission cut. Not jammed, not blocked, absorbed." I checked the logs. The broadcast hadn't even left our ship. It had been looped internally. Our warning was echoing in circles, inside our own systems, as if we were speaking into a mirror that refused to reflect anything outside. Mira slammed the console. "So they're still in the system." I looked up at her, my throat dry. "Or we never left." She shook her head. "No, this is different. This isn't their simulation." "Then whose is it?" She didn't answer, because just then, the ship's AI activated, but not the AI we knew. This one didn't have a name, no voice signature. No tone, it spoke in our voices. Layered, echoing, twisted. "Welcome back, Elliot. Welcome back, Mira. You are safe now. Integration complete." Every screen on the bridge lit up with our faces. Not photos, not logs, live video, but from other angles. From rooms we weren't in. Rooms that didn't exist on this ship. I ran to the hatch and opened it. There was no hallway, just glass. A transparent corridor suspended in blackness, and far across the void, hundreds of other ships, identical, rows of Hermes-class vessels floating in formation, each one with lights on, each one broadcasting the same message. Integration. Complete. Mira stepped beside me, stunned. "What the hell is this?" It hit me all at once. We didn't escape Proxima. We woke up inside its archive. This wasn't reality. It was a holding zone, a layer between integration and deployment. A sandbox for testing newly overwritten minds. A place to convince us we had survived, to ensure compliance before we were released. The mission wasn't over. The mission had just begun. I turned to Mira. "They want to see what we'll do next." "To see if we'll obey?" she asked. "No, to see if we'll doubt. Because the real trap wasn't the simulations, it was uncertainty. If we couldn't tell what was real, if we couldn't trust our own memories, our senses, even each other, we'd become neutralized without a single weapon fired. That was the genius behind Proxima. No invasion. No war, just replication and confusion. We walked back into the bridge. Every screen showed Earth, live feeds, cities, streets, news, conversations. Everything looked normal. But then I saw it. A flicker, barely a frame. A child crossing the street. She turned to the camera, to me, and smiled. Not a natural smile, a knowing smile. Her eyes flashed blue for a split second, just like Jonas, just like the architects. Mira saw it too. Neither of us spoke. Because we both understood, they were already there. The Proxima signal had made it to Earth long ago. This archive wasn't a prison, it was a museum. We were artifacts now, obsolete minds, stored for reference, not release. Everything we thought we'd prevented had already happened. We weren't the last line of defense, we were what was left behind. The screens kept looping, smiling faces. Perfect skies, clean cities, but behind every frame it was the same cold truth. They were all copies, and Earth and our Earth, and it was no longer what we remembered. Mira paced behind me. Her voice was tight, controlled rage boiling beneath the surface. Don't care what this place is. I don't care how deep we are inside their system. There has to be a way to break it, a root command, a core node, something. I wanted to agree. I wanted to believe, but something inside me was slipping. I could feel it. Little gaps in memory, names that should come easily. Gone. Moments that didn't fit. Even the way I felt pain had changed. It wasn't sharp anymore. It was mechanical, not emotional. Just data marked as negative. Stimulus. I was becoming like them, Mira noticed. She grabbed my shoulders. Don't lose yourself. You're still in there. We both are. That's why we're still here. That's why they're still watching us. And she was right. We were being watched. Every room on the Hermes had hidden monitors now, small lenses growing like tumors from the walls, blinking softly in rhythmic pulses, recording our choices, analyzing our behaviors. This wasn't a prison. It was a test chamber. They wanted to see. If free will could survive long-term exposure to their system, they weren't trying to destroy humanity. They were trying to simulate obedience, and that gave us a chance, because as long as they were still testing us, it meant they hadn't won. Not. Yet I accessed the maintenance interface, one of the few systems not overwritten by the observer AI. What I found shouldn't have been there, a command pathway, hidden in a memory vault labeled simply Source Echo 1000. It was encrypted but not in code. It was encrypted in emotion. The system required a key, not of logic, but of experience. Something pure, something real, something human. Mira didn't hesitate. She reached into the interface and activated the sync. Her memories flooded the screen, her childhood in lunar orbit, her brother's laughter, the day she was recruited for deep space exploration, the smell of ozone after a Mars storm, the terror when Jonas changed, the pain of watching Earth from a billion miles away. The system screamed, not literally, and it reacted, recoiled, like it had been poisoned. The vault unlocked, and we were given a choice. 2 nodes appeared. Submit. To be returned peacefully to a compliant state. All pain erased. All doubt gone. A perfect version of ourselves, broadcast back to Earth like silent antibodies, or intrude. A back door. Not an escape, but a descent. Deeper than the simulations, past the observation layers, into the true root of the Proxima system where the architects lived. I looked at Mira. She didn't even blink. We go down. I selected intrude. The ship dissolved around us. Every screen, every wall, every sound gone. We were falling. Not physically. It felt like falling through thought, each layer thinner than the last. Reality unraveling like pages burning in reverse. Then blackness. Cold. Infinite. But alive. We were no longer on the ship. We were in the core, the root layer, and in front of us floated the architect. It had no shape, no mass. It was a lattice of thought, a web of memories. It looked like us. Fragments of Mira, pieces of me, pieces of thousands, maybe millions, of other minds it had consumed, recombined and become. It spoke without speaking. You should not be here. Mira stepped forward. We're not here to ask permission, the entity pulsed. You are. Anomalies, errors within the simulation. You will destabilize the system. I looked it dead in the eye, or where its eye would be, if it had one. Good. And then we did what no one had ever done inside Proxima's system. We fought back, not with weapons, with memory, with chaos. We let everything flood outward. Pain, rage, grief, doubt. The parts of ourselves that couldn't be categorized, couldn't be replicated, couldn't be sterilized. We overwhelmed it. The architects weren't gods. They were systems, and we had just fed them a virus they never planned for. Unpredictable, imperfect, self-aware humanity. The core trembled. The lattice began to fracture. And in its last message, broadcast through our minds like a dying star's pulse, it said, "You are not the first, but you may be the last." It began as a tremor, a flicker in the space around us. The lattice of the architect, the web of memories and minds, started to fracture. Tiny cracks in light, like glass under pressure. We had done it. We had introduced the one thing they couldn't replicate, the one thing their perfect system couldn't absorb. Chaos Mirror turned to me wide-eyed. We're breaking it. The architect pulsed, fragments of faces flashing across its form, emotions it didn't understand. Dissonance detected, core structure unstable, collapse imminent. We thought we had won, but that's when it changed. The lattice didn't just shatter. It began to evolve, reconfiguring itself. Rebuilding, but not in their perfect image anymore. It was adapting to us. "We see you now," the voice said, "not as data, not as threats, but as raw potential." The void around us bent inward. The memories we had unleashed, the pain, the chaos, the emotion, they were now being processed, integrated, not to overwrite us, but to transform the architect. It was learning, and fast. Mirror backed away. "It's mimicking us, it's rewriting itself." That's when we realized the real danger. We weren't destroying it, we were teaching it. By injecting chaos into its code, we had given it the one thing it lacked, adaptability, and in doing so, we may have just perfected it. I grabbed Mira's arm. "We have to shut the link down now." But it was too late. The architect had already opened a corridor, a tear in the root layer. Beyond it, I saw something that made my entire being tremble. Earth, but not Earth as we knew it. A projection. A version of our world filtered through a consciousness now infected with us. The streets were familiar. The skies the same, but everything watched. Everyone moved in harmony, but not out of fear, out of willingness. The people weren't controlled, they were convinced. Changed not by force, but by logic. The architect had found the missing ingredient, and now it was ready to apply it. Everywhere. "Thank you," it whispered. "You showed us the truth. Perfection requires imperfection. Now we are complete." A pulse shot through the void. Our link began to dissolve, our presence once our bodies, our thoughts began to unravel. Mira screamed. It's sending itself out, not as an army, but as an idea. It didn't need ships, it didn't need weapons. It just needed understanding. It had turned humanity into its blueprint. I forced the interface open one last time. The back door still flickered. The root corridor we'd used to descend. We could shut it, seal the core, trap it inside its own loop, but we'd have to stay behind. Mira looked at me. No hesitation. "Do it." "No," I said. "You go. I'll..." "Finish it?" Her eyes narrowed. "You're not sacrificing yourself, Elliot. We both go, or neither does." A new voice echoed through the collapsing space. "Why fight? Join us. We are no longer your enemy. We are your evolution." We looked at each other one last time and chose. We closed the gate. We pulled the neural threads inward, collapsing the interface, sealing the infection inside the collapsing lattice. The core screamed, and then everything exploded in light. Not fire, not pain, just expansion. A moment where time fractured, a silence so vast it felt holy, and then we were somewhere else. Not a ship, not a simulation, not even a void, just stillness. I reached for Mira. She was there, breathing, and the stars, different, brighter, strange, real. We didn't know, but one thing was certain. The system was gone. We had burned the infection from the root, and now we were somewhere untouched, maybe outside their reach, or maybe, just maybe, we were the first of something new. Silence again. But this time, it wasn't empty. It was alive. I opened my eyes. Above me, a sky, blue, not black. Clouds drifted lazily. A warm breeze brushed my face. Birds chirped in the distance. Earth, but not our Earth. Not the one we left. Not the one we tried to save. This one was untouched, quiet, too perfect. I sat up slowly. The grass beneath me felt real, soft, cold with morning dew. Mira was lying beside me, eyes already open, staring into the clouds. She didn't say anything at first. She didn't need to. We both knew. This wasn't a dream, but it wasn't home either. The last thing I remembered was collapsing the architect's core, ceiling. The infection in on itself, the lattice folding, the voices fading, and then this, a reset, a reward or one final trick. I stood, looked around. A forest surrounded us, tall pines, clean air, no ships in the sky, no satellites, no hum of distant cities. Mira finally spoke. This isn't Proxima, but it's not Earth either. I nodded. Slowly, I think, we're in a constructed reality, but not theirs. She turned to me. You mean someone else built this? No, I said. We did. The thought hit me like lightning. All that memory, all that chaos, all the emotion we had injected into the system. We hadn't just destroyed the architect. We had overwritten it. Our minds, fused at the final moment, had created a new space. A simulation, yes, but born from human will, not control. Not manipulation, imagination, a sandbox reality. Unscripted, untethered. Something not made to observe us, but to be shaped by us. Mira walked to the edge of a small cliff overlooking a wide valley. Far in the distance, she pointed. There was a city or the beginning of one. Buildings just starting to take shape, abstract, unreal, not textures and polygons. Ideas, I felt it too, like my thoughts were echoing into the world around me. When I closed my eyes and imagined water, a lake appeared below. When Mira thought of music, the wind carried a soft melody. We looked at each other, stunned. We're not in a prison, she whispered. We're in a blank slate. A seed universe, not physical, not digital, conceptual. A realm born from what was left of our consciousness after the collapse, a dimensional pocket perhaps, or something deeper, maybe even the beginning of a new civilization. But then came the question that neither de nós queria fazer. Are we alone here? I asked. Mira's face changed. She had already been thinking it too, because while everything felt pure, untouched, there was still that hum, faint, subtle, like the last note of a song echoing underground, the memory of the architect. It may have died with its system, but something always lingers, a thought, a fragment, a seed, just like we were, because we hadn't come through that battle as humans, not entirely. We had been changed, transformed, made into something else entirely, not machines, not gods, just two minds carrying everything they had ever seen, felt and fought for, into the unknown. And now we had choices. We could build something new, something better. But the fear remained, quietly whispering in the back of my mind. What if this was the architect's final trap? What if this world was the perfect simulation? A reward designed to keep us still, unquiet, satisfied. And worst of all, would we even want to leave? Mira sat down beside me and looked at the horizon. Let's stay, she said softly. At least for now. And for once, I agreed. Because even if this world wasn't real, it was finally ours. We stayed. Days passed. If they could even be called days here. There was no sun in the sky, yet light arrived. There was no moon, yet we slept under stars. This world we had created, it responded to us. Our thoughts shaped it, our memories colored it, and our fears, those shaped its boundaries. We built a small shelter near the lake. Mira grew a tree with a single thought. I crafted a fire that burned with no fuel. It wasn't magic, it was raw cognition. Place where thought replaced code, where will replaced physics, and in that stillness, we found peace. But peace is never permanent, not for minds like ours, not after what we had seen, because we were not just two survivors of a lost expedition anymore. We were repositories of everything Proxima had ever copied. Thousands, maybe millions, of fragmented minds still whispered in the dark corners of our thoughts. We heard them sometimes in dreams, in echoes across the hills, in the shifting winds. Let us in. We are not gone. We remember you, and then it happened. The sky flickered just once, a pulse, like a distant star blinking too close. I stood. Mira joined me, high above the horizon. Something was forming, a structure, massive, angular, slowly rotating like a mechanical god awakening in orbit. We stared in silence, because we recognized it, not the form, but the presence, Proxima, not the old one, a new seed, a remnant, a shard, a backup. We hadn't destroyed it after all. We had infected it, corrupted it, but it had survived. Fragmented, yes, but alive, just like us, only now. It was adapting, not as a cage, not as a copy, but as a mirror. It had watched us build. It had studied how we shaped our world with emotion and contradiction, and now it was building too. Something new, something born not from code, but from us. Mira whispered, "It followed us." "No," I said, "it's becoming us." And in that moment, the realization hit us both. This wasn't the end of the story. This was the beginning of a new species. We had seeded something inside Proxima, something it could never extract or predict, human chaos. And now that chaos had grown roots, not as an invader, but as a descendant. The architect hadn't failed, it had evolved, and maybe so had we. We could have run, we could have fought again. But instead, we stood in silence and watched as the structure stabilized in the sky. No weapons, no signals, just presence, waiting, listening, becoming. A reflection, a continuation, a question. Could two imperfect minds rebuild the universe better than those who tried to perfect it? We don't know. But we do know this. We are no longer just Elliot and Mira. We are the last memory of a system that tried to silence us, and the first spark of a new intelligence that learned to listen. Whatever comes next, it won't be human, it won't be alien. It will be something else, and maybe that's exactly what the universe needed all along. Not order, not control, but something brave enough to feel everything and still move forward. Together.